Now, Emily Miller of the Washington Times with us. Emily, how you doing?
Hi, Cam. How are you?
I am very good. Thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Of course, my pleasure.
And you were there last night for the State of the Union.
And I'm still here today with a brief reprieve for bed. It was quite the drama rather than a serious policy going on when it came to gun control here in the Capitol at the State of the Union. The Bloomberg's organization, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, which is closely aligned with this White House and talks to them frequently, organized this whole plan where they were going to bring in, which they did, 120 victims of gun violence and their family members, and then got a bunch of House members and senators to give up their one ticket in the galleries for the speech to about 20 victims. So, and then you saw Michelle Obama had the parents of that poor child who was teenager who was killed in Chicago recently, who performed at the inauguration, and she also had a teacher. She had a fourth grade student from Newtown who didn't even go to Sandy Hook, but was from Newtown. So the whole place was, filled with these faces of people, and obviously the objective was to win over, whether it's the public or I guess the lawmakers, based on the emotions of these people. And they had a press conference, and it was horrendous with these parents who lost their children crying and fathers crying over their children, and none of it made any policy move. It was a completely, a shameful use of these people's emotions and personal losses to push their agenda. And, they had, as you probably saw, they had everybody wearing these green ribbons, and both sides of the aisle wore them. It's to honor the victims of Sandy Hook, which was their school colors. And that's completely fine, and we all are so sad about what happened to those children. But to have these victims and sort of drag them out and use them for this political agenda, whereas none of this has to do with policy, none of this has to do with facts, nothing anyone's proposing from Obama or Mayors Against Legal Guns or any of these groups would do anything to reduce gun crime or prevent mass shootings. So it's just a matter of drama, and that's not how laws should be made in this country. Laws should be made on data and fact and experience. That's something we've done, as opposed to what Mr. Obama keeps saying, if we can save one life. Well, if we passed a law in Washington for every one life we could save, they would never leave town. They'd be here all the time. So, it's when you can't win an argument on fact, you start going to emotion, and that's what we saw last night.
Well, and I noticed on Twitter today they've got the campaign of "They Deserve a Vote." That they've got a hashtag now, and let's see, sign and retweet. Tell House Republicans to take action against gun violence. So here's the thing. Look, I mean, it's a great phrase. It beats winning the future from a previous State of the Union address, but they also deserve the truth. And as a matter of fact, we deserve the truth. And when you have Vice President Biden caught on tape saying, look, nothing that we do here is fundamentally going to alter or change the ability for these people to commit these acts of mass murder. We can't say that this is going to reduce, gun deaths by 1,000 a year. I mean, when you've got the vice president telling lawmakers this, well, I think the American public and those who are pushing for these gun control laws deserve to know that too. That what they are being used for is to advance this gun control agenda and the gun control legislation that they have been pushing for years and years and years, and it will not do anything to make us safer. And it does not mean that you hate children if you say that. It doesn't mean that you are a bad American if you say that. It just means you know that their gun control laws don't work.
Well, Cam, the one thing that President Obama said last night that I completely agree with in the entire speech, I might say, is that we should have a vote. Let's have a vote on the so-called assault weapons ban. Let's have a vote on the high-capacity magazines and all these things they have, because they won't pass. And I think it's important to have a vote. The reason they won't pass is because members of Congress, first of all, most members of Congress believe strongly in the Second Amendment. This is definitely a pro-gun House. It might very well be a pro-gun Senate. We haven't really seen where the votes are in some of these Democrats who are from rural states. But it's great. Let's have a vote. I am quite sure that the votes will fail because the assault weapons ban was in effect for 10 years. It failed to reduce crime. They're not going to pass you're not going to get lawmakers who are lawyers, who are policy people to vote for something that's already failed. high-capacity magazines. Justice Department did, the CDC did a huge study of every law ever come out, a very extensive study, every firearms law. None of them approved. And CDC, as you know, is no friend of guns or the Second Amendment. It's proved that they could not find any evidence that any gun law reduced crime, much less prevent mass shootings, which affects 30-some people a year. So I think this is great. Have a vote. Vote. They should vote tomorrow and get it over with, I think. But we're dragging it out. Let's vote right before the 2014 midterms, and let's see who's going to vote to take away Second Amendment rights for some pie-in-the-sky kumbaya idea that this will make the world safer. It's a great plan, actually.
Now, Emily, so this is that we've been talking about what's going on at the federal level, but at the state level, what we're seeing here are states with, a majority of anti-gun lawmakers try to ram through as much as they can, as quickly as they can. And you found this fascinating story about Governor Martin O'Malley actually emailing hunters to try to assure them, hey, we're not coming for your guns. You hunters, you're okay.
Well, this was such a shocking abuse of power, and I heard about it. I actually wasn't sure it was accurate. What he did was Mayor O'Malley of Maryland, who, as you know, is shoving through legislation very similar to what Cuomo did in New York. He wrote the legislation. He's demanding it quickly move to the House and Senate in this legislative 2-month period that they have, and they're getting close towards the end of it, based on Newtown, based on this concept that we're going to make life safer and children safer, and instead it's just radical assault on the Second Amendment. Now, they had a big hearing last week, and as you know, thousands of gun owners showed up to Annapolis, and so in an effort, O'Malley is trying to divide hunters from those who own guns for self-defense, which are often, as you know, the same people. But in order to divide, he went to the Department of Natural Resources, which keeps all the hunting licenses, and got all of their emails and sent an email from his office, from his government office, and started the email with pretending that this was about wishing everyone a wonderful junior waterfowl hunting day last Saturday, and goes on about the wonderfulness of everyone shooting waterfowl, and then very quickly shifts into his gun control efforts and trying to get them on his case for gun control efforts. And he's very sneaky in it also. This is all in his email. He says to them, be sure you understand I carve out shotguns and rifles from any kind of licensing registration.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's completely ridiculous because he's calling for the complete ban of all so-called assault weapons ban, which, as you know, are the same thing as rifles. I mean, that's what you can hunt with a rifle, with one of the so-called assault weapons ban. It's a rifle. So, it's just a lot of sneakiness. And so Marylanders are infuriated. And, as you know, Maryland Shall Issue, which is a great pro-gun group organization, just saying, this is not going to work. We had just as many hunters as anybody else at the thousands of people that protested in Annapolis last week. But I've heard a lot of people and commenting on my story who live in Maryland saying this is such an abuse of power and the abuse of, their confidential information, and they really want to push back on O'Malley using it for this purpose.
Well, after the last election, Emily, and seeing, all of the ways that the Team Obama had targeted voters, I'm not surprised by it. It is wrong, I think, it just seems, I don't know, it just seems wrong. Perhaps it's not illegal or against the law for the governor to talk to constituents this way and to say, hey, hunters. But, I'll tell you one thing. It does show that this thinking, this mentality from the anti-gun side really hasn't changed much since the 90s. That was part of their tactics back then, to try to divide and conquer gun owners. But as you point out, a lot of the people who got these emails and were told by Governor O'Malley, hey, you're okay, we're not going after your guns, they are the owners of these firearms. They do own these magazines, and they are going to be impacted by these new gun bills.
That's a very good point. As also, he wants to institute a 10-round magazine limit from 20 rounds. And this bill in Maryland, people in Maryland are so upset because it's just like New York. It is being jammed through as fast as possible. And again, it goes back to what we were saying on the national level. None of these laws will make Maryland safer. None of these laws will reduce crime. None of these laws will prevent mass shootings. And in fact, no one in Maryland was killed last year from a rifle. No one. did not happen. So this is all about, O'Malley's big picture. He wants to run for president. He wants to abide by the broader national liberal base. But in doing so, taking away the Second Amendment rights of people who live in a state that state's nickname is the Free State.
Yeah. So what are you hearing, Emily? I mean, it's interesting. I know that there was some opposition to O'Malley's proposals from his fellow Democrats, not necessarily because of the gun issue, but because of the mental health side of things. I mean, what are you hearing about these bills in Maryland?
It seems from all accounts, pro and against it, it's on the fast track, and it's been very hard to stop. I mean, perhaps it can get, watered down a little bit. I'm not sure. One of the things to keep an eye on is Beretta, as you know, is based in Maryland and a huge employer in Southern Maryland and in Hoyer's district. And they're feeling under attack. And I think it's going to, like it did with Remington in New York, this is going to drive jobs out of state. Because why are they going to stay in a state that is constantly attacking them when they are providing so many jobs and economic opportunity to the states? So, I think there's also an economic issue that these governors are not considering that will have a bigger impact on their, on their terms if they start losing jobs for these emotional bills.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we're seeing companies, in Colorado and in New York State and in Illinois say, look, we'll leave if we have to. If you make it so untenable for us to continue to do business here, well, we'll have to take our business elsewhere. And we've also seen other states, start courting these businesses, saying we would love to have you relocate and bring your jobs with you.
That's right. Texas especially is really going out of their way to help, get these companies to move. And I do think in the next year you're going to start seeing some of these big companies move to states that are friendlier to them, to help them, who aren't trying to ban their own product from them. And for one industry in the Obama economy that's doing well, the firearms and the ammunition industries. And yet, they have these states where a lot of them are based in these states where the governors are going after them directly and going after their product. And for example, in New York, you've got Remington based there, and now they're going to have to make all new magazines with 7-round max that just go to New York, and think of the economic burden of that. So, again, we're not talking about saving any lives. We're not talking about reducing crime. This would not prevent Sandy Hook from happening, and it has this impact on jobs in a really down economy. So I think a whole lot of bad ideas coming out of this they think that they're getting away with this because it's emotional, and it is emotional. Of course, it's emotional. There's people's lives at stake, but, I think there's going to be a lot of fallout from this over the course of time.
I think you are right. Hey, listen, Emily, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's good talking to you, and hope we can do it again soon.
Of course. Talk to you soon.